Hi lovelies, it's France and this is week 87 of the Journal on Monday series. This week, tar gel or string gel, which is the same, and clear gesso are the two main ingredients for this art journaling spread. And the first thing I'm doing is that I'm colorizing some tar gel using fluid acrylic. And I'm also adding a couple of drops of airbrush color, but I'm not completely mixing in that second one. And I'm mixing it on top of a packaging plastic that I kept. So now that my blending is done, I'm starting to spread it on the paper, and I'm working on watercolor paper. Now, while I was mixing, I was taking care not to mix too much air bubbles in my tar gel. If I don't want any air bubbles, I have to leave my tar gel to rest for days in a jar, which I didn't want to do, of course. So I just mixed it very, very carefully. And now you can see that I didn't completely mix in the darker blue, but it wasn't visible enough to my liking, so I added some more splatters. As tar gel needs quite some time to dry, I have a lot of time to play around and keep on blending it on my paper until it looks like I want it to look. And once this is done, I'm leaving it aside to dry. Today's video is a very short one, it's only 10 minutes long. Here I go in with the clear gesso using a makeup sponge on top of a stencil. So I was saying it's only a 10-minute long video because a lot of the action took place off camera, and a lot of the action was actually drying time because the tar gel really need a lot of time to dry. And now that my clear gesso is dried, I have a surface that has a little grip, so I can add some pen pastel. The pen pastel needs a porous surface, so I cannot work with the pen pastel directly on top of the tar gel. By adding the clear gesso, I'm adding a porous surface so that the pen pastel has a grip. And I'm adding some stamping using Archival ink, and as you can see, I draw grid on the backside of my stamp because it's very hard to stamp straight, and I like to stamp it without an acrylic block. So this allows me to stamp straight without the use of an acrylic block. And this is blue Archival ink so that the stamping blends in with the background. Now the camera doesn't pick it up. The tar gel has a lot of shine to it, and you can add a lot of texture with it. But you will see it in the photos at the end. A leftover strip of plaster, and this is also the cambric that I used last week to apply the modeling paste on my spread, and I'm adding some Colorex to it. And once these are dried, I'm going in with metallic pen pastel. I want those to look like a metallic something. So I'm really insisting in adding a lot of metallic pen pastel to it. And of course I did completely dry these before I'm going in with the pen pastel. And to add some more sturdiness to my fabric, I'm adding clear gesso. So I don't need to fixate my pen pastel at this point. The clear gesso will fixate. And then I'm doing the same with my strip of plaster. So first adding metallic pen pastel, then clear gesso, leaving it to dry, and then going in with the next step. Now I also want to add some drippage, of course, with the tar gel. And I'm using my same palette, which is my reused packaging, adding some airbrush color this time, which is an acrylic. And again, mixing it. Now, as you can see, I don't have the patience that I had for the first layer, because with all the drying time, this was taking a lot of time to get everything done. A lot of waiting. So tar gel, you can start a dripping line and it will keep on going as long as you have tar gel on your palette knife. So at this point it doesn't look like much, but it will in the end. And as I still have a lot of my mixture over, I'm adding it in the middle of my spiral. Meanwhile, my plaster and cambric are dried, while the clear gesso on top of it is dried, so I can add even more metallic pen pastel. Those have a really rich shine to them, so they really look metallic. Once I'm done with this step, I'm going outside to fixate everything, to make sure that the pen pastel stays on the surface and not on my fingers. And I thought of using that little strip of paper, but I didn't in the end. When I got back to my spread, it had slipped. So it wasn't drying flat, it was drying all wonky, which made the tar gel continue to drip. And well, I thought, okay, let's go with the flow and let's play with that fun drippage we have. After cutting my paper, I added a lot of sewing, and that's what I meant by action off camera. Binding all those pieces of thread took me more than half an hour. So it was a game of patience, but the result was worth it. To make it possible to add all that sewing, I had to add a lot of baby powder on top of my paper, because the tar gel is quite sticky and otherwise my paper would get stuck in my sewing machine. So the baby powder solves that problem. But I had to clean it off again, so that was what I was doing with my baby wipe. And now I can start adding the embellishments that I want, but I don't want to cover my background because I like it too much. Adding a bit of distress ink on this tag, and I had to add some sewing to those pieces of fabric as well. So gluing everything in place and putting some weight on it so that it stays where it has to stay. And I want to add this Prima wooden border to it, and to make it easier I'm just attaching it with 2 braids. And I'm also adding a Tim Holtz pen nib, and all the metal that I'm using, except the metallic thread, has been home rusted. After sticking everything in my art journal, I'm adding just a tiny bit of art journaling, and that's it. I hope you liked today's video. The poll for next week's video is up on my blog. See you there and have a happy one. Ta-da!